First of all, I want to thank everybody for all the great questions I got in the comment section from my last video. So this will be my first part of the Q&A. I got more questions than I think I can handle in one video, and I want to do it properly, so bear with me. Some of the questions was actually from beginners who maybe doesn't do music at all or wants to know how to get started and what kind of gear to get. What's the best sampler, what's the best way to start making beats, and I want to make this thing, how do I make it possible? So I'm just going to go right ahead and start talking a bit about my perspective on gear for a beginner. The first point I want to make is that I don't think it's much about the gear at all. I think it's about you, your creativity, and how willing you are to put some time and some effort into this music making kind of thing. I want to mention a friend of mine named Jakob Hack, who has a YouTube channel about music production that's just on the iPad. He calls himself a mobile musician, and he can make a full track, a full EP, he can make a full album just on the iPad and the iPhone. I think that says quite a lot about the technology we have today. When I started out here in a small town in Sweden, I wanted to make hip-hop music. Back then, around here, people barely knew what hip-hop was and nobody had a clue how to make it. I went to a small studio nearby and the guy showed me an electric guitar and a 4-track tape recorder and was like, "Here, I can help you out, let's make a track." That's not the case today now, is it? Today you could buy the machine, you could buy a Ableton Push, an Electribe sampler, one of those keyboard workstation things that nobody likes. You can make tracks on an iPad. What I'm trying to say here is that I think you can get any of those devices as long as you are ready to commit to it. Don't buy the Ableton Push and try it for 2 weeks and throw it out the window. Buy the Ableton Push or the machine or whatever you choose and decide, this is my device, I'm going to use it. I'm going to learn it and I'm going to make music on this device. Check out YouTube for tutorials, check out the manual and really get to learn it. It's gonna be hard sometimes, it's gonna take time, but the more effort you put into it, the better you're gonna learn the device, and that makes it easier for you to use the device to get your creativity out there. I love Machine. I really have gotten to know the scene and pattern system and how to arrange a full track in there. I barely use Logic nowadays. Mostly I just work inside of Machine. In one way I want to recommend Machine even to a beginner because it comes fully loaded with sounds, it handles samples really well, and of course it's connected to the computer, which makes it easy to go one step further into the editing of stuff. On the other hand, if you want to play keys on this, you need to buy a MIDI keyboard of some kind. And you also need a computer to work with it, so that might be a bit pricey for you. If you haven't done music at all before, I would suggest going into the App Store on the iPad or the iPhone and start looking for stuff. But if you do want to use a computer, which might be a good idea to end up with, this guy asked a question about the software. And I must say that I don't think it's hard at all. I think most music production software are pretty user-friendly nowadays. I recommend taking a look at GarageBand for a complete beginner. I also want to mention a DAW called Reaper that you can get totally free for 60 days with no limitations at all, I think. And that's a real DAW, that's a real digital audio workstation. And that's a great software to start with in the DAW world if you want to record stuff that way. And this guy, he specifically asked for a sampler to start with, and if I'm not talking anything more about Machine or the Push or MPC Renaissance, I want to mention the SP404SX. I think that's a really cool little sampler that a lot of people are using right now. It has a specific sound and it's very limited when it comes to polyphony, and you can't really pitch samples at it, but it sounds good and it's super fun to work with. If money is an issue and you want to get a hardware sampler, I must mention the Electribes again. You can get these secondhand really cheap right now, and I think they're pretty cool to work with. And I guess I also have to mention the MPC 500. I haven't used that one myself, so I can't say much about the MPC series at all. People tend to say both good and bad things about the MPC 500. It's small and it's cheap and it's a standalone sampler though. Another question goes like this. Do you think the OP1 is a good starting machine for first-time beat making? And I need to be honest here. the OP1 isn't for everyone, and if you haven't done any music production at all, I don't think you should run out and buy an OP1. It's an expensive device, which it should be because it's awesome. It's both a synth and a sampler, like 3 sequencers, a tape recorder, but it doesn't work like a normal workstation would. It's limited to 4 tracks to work with as is. And if you're not sure about what you're doing, I think the OP1 is not the right place to start for many musicians. Get to learn the basics on some other type of gear, and then if you feel like this is something I want to do, I want to learn more, I love the looks of the OP1 and whatever, go out and buy one. But as a first device, I'm not sure. Another question is the PTO1 scratch from Newmark a good thing to start scratching? And I think so. I would say yes to that question because all the videos I've seen of it seems to be nice, and all the reviews I've heard on YouTube, it looks okay. It's not a Technics 1210, it isn't, but it's not supposed to be. But to learn some basic scratch techniques, yeah, I think it's a great device to start with. So the next part of this Q&A will address all the questions that has to do with me. My inspirations, how I got started, my crew, my past and whatnot. And I should be able to release that video in just a couple of days. So please subscribe and stick around, I guess. Bye.